G'day so-and-sos, welcome to my sewing room. My name's Kathy and in today's tutorial we're going to be making a shopping bag. Now I've done a shopping tote bag tutorial before, but that one involved a lot more like interfacing and sewing together pieces and everything else. This one is 2 pieces of fabric like this. So the sides are expandable so that when you're doing your shopping you can fit a little bit more in there, and it does open up. And then it's got this pocket on the front where the whole bag folds up into itself and you pop it in there and it's just nice and easy in your handbag. Now it does also have a slip pocket on the inside, which is really cool. Just pop your phone or your keys or whatever else you need to take in there, a card. And then when you're done, you fold it all up again and pop him back in his pocket. If you want to see what that looks like, you have to watch the video all the way to the end. Let's get cracking. Righto, let's have a look at what we need for today's project. Now I've got my outside fabric and my lining fabric. Both of them are just a quilting cotton and I'm not interfacing today, which is a nice change. A couple of nice big acrylic rulers and of course my cutting mat. I've got my clips, some chalk, little purple thing, even though it's pink today, to turn out my work, my rotary cutter and or scissors. Okay, let's have a look at this fabric. Now both pieces of fabric will be cut out the same. They will be 18 inches wide by 42 inches long. I've just got that one folded over so it fits in the screen. Got both pieces cut out. What we're going to do now is fold them both right sides together, which just means the pretty side. If you haven't heard that term before, give it a bit of a press there, and then this one, same thing, right sides together, and then I'm going to lay them together. Now, both these pieces have the fold at the same end. So that's the folded edge and that's the folded edge. Give that a little press, smooth down, make sure I'm as lined up as I can be, because we're going to cut these together so that our cuts are exactly the same on both pieces. Okay, looking good. I'm going to flip it around this way. So this is my folded end. What I'm going to do is find my ruler and my chalk, and I'm going to measure down 9 inches, which will be my halfway point, and just give myself a little mark. And then from that mark, I'm going to measure 3 inches up that way, and then 3 inches down this way. Now just make sure that you are doing this on the wrong side of your fabric. Now from these outer markings, I'm going to measure 6 inches down. And what I'm going to do is line up that 6-inch line with that fold. And then that should line up with one of the lines along the bottom there, so that I know I'm not going on some crazy angle. The same thing up at this one. I'm going to line up my 6-inch line along with the fold, and I can see that chalk line I've made is nice and straight. And then along the bottom as well. So then I've got my square cut out. Now I don't really want to cut it out in a square, so I'm just going to round off these corners a little bit. Just freehand it, or if you like, grab yourself something round to do that with. Now I'm going to whack some clips just along the edge here so that my fabric doesn't shift around on me. because I want these two pieces to stay lined up nicely. The pumpkin tried to steal my pin cushion yesterday, which would have been a nightmare because she would have got pins all over the floor. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is cut through both pieces of that fabric. Now, when I cut, I'm making sure that the other blade of my scissors is staying flat against my table. So you want to look slightly ahead of your scissors. Now I want to do this nice and neat because we're going to use this fabric for our pockets. There we go. So leave that bit pinned and just pop it aside. Now what we're going to do is open these up, and they will have that nice big hole in the middle. And then grab our other piece from underneath. And I'm going to place these right sides together. Open that up and lay that down. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to whack some clips along this edge, and we're going to take it to the sewing machine, and we're just going to sew that down all together at about 3/8 of an inch. Okay, I'm just going to be using just a normal straight stitch, nothing fancy. I've only used this machine a couple of times, so I'm still getting used to it. Just carefully around those corners, fold everything up out of the way, and you get the drift. So do this bit, just go nice and slow. Try and stay at a nice even seam length, and I will see you back over at the table in a moment for the next step. So there we go, that is all stitched down. Now, before we turn it out, we're just going to snip into these corners a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just do little snips right up to that stitch line, but being really careful not to hit that stitch line, and just snip around those curves. Now the reason we do this is when we're going to turn it out in a moment, and when we do that, we want these corners to be sitting nice and flat. Now again, just being really careful not to hit those stitches. I'm just making life hard for myself doing it like this, aren't I? Okay. Now we're going to take whatever piece you've got laying on top, fold it up and push it through. So now our right sides are on the outside. Now grab your ironing mat. And then we're going to top stitch at about 1/8 of an inch. I've got the automatic back stitch on, which is cool. Get this bit done, and I will see you back over at the table for the next bit. So that is all top stitched down. Now I'm just going to pop this piece to the side for a moment, and we're just going to have a quick little look at these bits of scrap fabric. What we're going to do is just take it over to the machine and just sew around it at about 3/8, and we're just going to leave this bit down the bottom open so that we can turn it out in a moment. Okay, let's go do that. I'm just going to start at one of those points that I marked on my fabric. And just zip up around that side, up to the top. And then same thing on the other side. I'm just going to start where I've marked that. start with my needle in my work. It's just a habit. I don't know if I really need to do that, worry about that much on this machine, but it's a very good habit to have, to always start with the needle in your work. Let's cut away any loose threads we have, and let's just turn this out the right way. And this is where my little pink purple thing might come in handy. Poke out those corners, those curves, and there we go. And then I'm just going to iron down, or iron it nice and neat anyway, but just where we folded that bit out along the bottom. Okay. Now I'm not going to sew up that hole because I'm just going to sew it. I'm just going to top stitch from this corner around on the fabric. So I'm going to make sure that I'm taking that main piece and folding it up so that all I have is just this one piece of fabric. I don't want to sew through both sides because you'll see it from the outside. I am 2 inches spot on down from the top. Now it'll be really easy to center because it's the exact piece that you cut out of here, so you'll be able to see it. But if you want to measure it all up, then that's okay, you can do that, but I'm pretty confident that I've got that pretty much in the center. I'm going to whack some pins in it to hold in place. I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to sew along the sides and the bottom, making sure that I'm closing up that gap, and make sure that you leave that top bit open. Automatic back stitch on there, so make sure you back stitch. And then slow right down on these curves. And make sure you are nice and close to that edge because we don't have that much room for that hem inside that we folded up that seam. And again, nice and slow around this side. Just guiding the fabric around. I'm not pulling or pushing. And then up to this top corner. And what we're going to do now is lay it out. I've got my lining side facing up towards me. I'm going to grab one end and I'm just going to fold and fold and fold and fold. Now if you've ever made scrunchies, you might know what I'm doing. So get to about there, and then I'm just going to take the top piece there, which is the lining, fold it over, flip the whole thing, and then put these 2 edges right sides together. And then I'm going to clip. So if you need to watch that a few times just to get your head around it, go ahead and do that. It is really simple. Like once you've got it out in front of you and you try, then it'll come a lot easier. Well, for me anyway, this sort of thing comes a lot easier if I actually have it in hand and do it along with the video, rather than watching it and trying to think about it, if that makes sense. Like doing is easier. Now use pins or clips all the way down so those edges are nice and neat and lined up. And then we're going to take that back over to the machine and we're going to sew that at about 1/4 of an inch all the way down. Okay, so needle in my work, and I want about 1/4 inch, which is another thing what these little purple things are good for. They've got a 1/4 inch mark on the end, so it's just nice and easy to see. And off we go. just make sure when you're sewing, like with this hand I'm feeling and making sure that none of that other fabric has rolled up into my seam, because you don't want to get it back to the table, try and turn it out and find that you've accidentally caught any of that inside fabric. Okay, there is our little sausage. Now let's open that up, turn that out. There we go. So we've got one side stitched up nicely. Okay, now I'm going to fold. Fold it up, get to here, pull this top piece over, flip it over, so these two edges are right sides together. Okay, and same thing, I'm just going to clip down that length, take it back over to the machine and do exactly the same thing as what we did. And again, just making sure that you're feeling that none of this fabric is shifting over and getting caught up on you. And then just the whole length again, I'm just going to keep feeling with my left hand and make sure that none of that fabric is getting caught up, because that would be a real pain in the butt to have to unpick. Okay, there is our big sausage. Now what we need to do is turn it the right way out. So stick your hand right up there, grab and pull it out. That's kind of cool, hey? Okay, now we're going to iron these side seams down nice and flat. And just get them nice and neat. Now what I should have done is taken that pocket over, the other pocket over, and just sewn it out the right way while I was at the machine, but we can do that in a moment. Now when I sewed that pocket on, I am going to go through both pieces of fabric. And the reason for that is I want it to have a little bit more durability to it, because that pocket is that bit that we fold the bag up into. So we're going to be pulling at it a fair bit. So that one, going through both pieces of fabric, will just give it a little bit more strength to handle the wear and tear. So get that nice and ironed down, and I will see you for the next step. What we're going to do now is work on this other pocket. Now this is just the other scrap piece of fabric that we used, just the same as the slip pocket. So it's just folded in half along those curved edges, and that is the folded edge there. Now what I'm going to do is just sew down those sides. So again, just about 1/4 inch, letting it backstitch down to the bottom, and then just down the other side, about 1/4 inch down to the bottom. So now we've got that pocket just sewn down those sides. Now let's just turn it out and give it a bit of a poke up in those corners and give it a bit of an iron. Now, like I said, I didn't want to iron this fabric because it's got glitter, but that's okay. I'm just going to give it a quick hit just so it lays flat when I sew it onto the bag, and I'll just sew that side down and hopefully I don't get glitter everywhere. Okay, now what I'm going to do, see how that bottom is still rounded like our other pocket was rounded? That round edge is going to go along the bottom edge of our bag. So just with my scissors, or you can use your rotary cutter if you like, just trim that off square. Doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to be sewn on, and that's what I want to talk about now. So my machine, because most of the bag is black, my machine is currently loaded up with black thread, top and bottom. But what we're going to do is sew this pocket on to the bottom of our bag. Now, if I leave the black thread in my top thread and in my bobbin, on this side, I'm going to have black thread. So if that's something that you're worried about, if you're using two different coloured fabrics, think about that and either change up your top or your bobbin thread to suit. So what I could do is go and load up my bobbin thread with blue so that I don't have the black stitch line and it's a little bit more disguised. I'm too lazy. I was going to be bothered, so I'm going to stick with black, but it's just something to think about. So I'm going to center that, and it's pretty easy to see where the center is because I'm just going to line it up with this curve at the top, line that up down the bottom, whack some pins in it, and we'll go back to the machine and stitch that on. Now I'm only going to be stitching up the sides. I'm not going to worry about the bottom. I'm going to make sure the bottom edge is lined up with the bottom edge of the bag. And of course I'm going to make sure that I leave the top open. What I am going to do, just so it looks a little bit nicer, before I sew it on, I'm just going to top stitch across the top of this pocket, just to give it a little bit more of a finished look. Okay, let's go do that. Okay, like I said, I'm just going to top stitch this edge first. So nice and close, about 1/8 of an inch to the edge, because we're top stitching. And it's going to back stitch and just close off that top edge. Okay, I've just whacked a couple of pins in that and lined it up with that center hole. And again, I'm going to try and stay around 1/8 of an inch. Now, I am going to remember to backstitch. On then my machine didn't do it. That's funny. I will go back and do a little backstitch down there. That bottom bit is going to be caught up in the seam actually, so it will be okay. There we go. And then off we go. Now remember, you just want to do up each side. You don't want to do along the bottom or the top, because we've already top stitched across the top there. So there is our pocket sewn on. Now what I'm going to do is grab my ironing mat, and I'm just going to give these side seams a quick press down, because we're going to fold these sides in. Okay, what we're going to do now is have our bag lying facing upwards, so lining side up, and then I'm going to take this side and just fold this edge in to meet that side of our opening, and then same thing to the other side. And I'm just going to whack a clip there. Now what I'm going to do is just fold that in half like that, because I just want to find the center. So I'm just going to give that a bit of an iron so that I can see it when I open it back up. I probably should have done that first, fold it in half, find the center, and then folded those sides in, but it doesn't matter. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just give myself a little chalk line along those creases so that I can see it. Because what we're going to do now, this is what gives the bag some of its shape and the way that it sort of folds. We're going to take it back over to the sewing machine, And we're just going to stitch down along those 2 lines that I just made. So we're just going to stitch across here and across here. And that's just going to help hold these side pieces down and create these handles. So let's go do that. Pretty easy. I mean, this whole bag is a pretty good, easy make. I really do like it. Okay, what we're going to do now is fold it in half so the lining side is facing up. And we're just going to open up those side bits. Now, if you hear snoring, it's not me. Elvis has just come in and joined me in my sewing room and is having a little nap not far from my feet. So, yeah. Snoring will be him. Okay, so we want to line that up best we can. Line it up from here, from that neck edge, rather than from the bottom, because it's more important that this edge line up. Now we're going to sew up these side seams, and we want to stop level with that opening. So grab a ruler. I mean, you can eyeball it, but I mean, you know, grab a ruler and just give yourself a little mark there and there. Now these are going to be stress points when we're carrying our bag. There's going to be a lot of stress. I have a lisp. Stress on these points. So we want to make sure that we do back stitch, and we even come in a little bit. So I've made those lines maybe a little bit under 1/2 inch. And what I'm actually going to do is start from the end of that line, back stitch, sew in a little bit, and then sew down, just so it's got that little bit of extra strength to it. And just line up those sides and clip them so that when I do sew down that side, I'm making sure that I catch both sides, because I don't want too, okay, this is going to be hard to say too thick of a seam, too thick of a seam. You know what I mean, what I'm trying to say. All right. The worst hobby for someone with a lisp. I swear there's so many THs especially and S's. Right, so clip down, start in a little bit, back stitch, come down, and then we're going to sew down those sides. I'm going to get rid of all these loose annoying threads. Okay, like I said, I'm going to start out a little bit and then go in a little bit, spin, and then a little bit more than 1/4 inch, sort of whatever you can do, so you're making sure that you're grabbing both sides, and then a back stitch a little bit there. Come down. So there's our side seams sewn down. I dare anyone to say that 3 times fast. Then we're going to turn it out the right way. And we're going to grab our iron and our ironing mat again. So what we're going to do now is we are going to fold in this side seam so that it's level with that strap. So it sort of goes where it naturally wants to sit anyway. And those sides are even, just like that. So we have that nice straight edge there, and just tuck it in. Okay, now I'm just going to give that a bit of a hit. Now, if you not like me and didn't use a glitter one, make sure your iron's turned up a little bit, just so you get them laying really flat. because you want that to hold in place. That's better. Okay. Now I'm going to clip along that bottom edge. I'm going to whack a couple of big clips on the sides just to hold them where I want them. And some clips along the bottom. Because what we're going to do is sew along about 3/8 of an inch. Then when we come back, we're going to cut that off with the rotary cutter and then flip it inside out and sew again so that that seam is hidden up inside. So if your bottom is a lot messier, then even go 1/2 an inch. It's fine. If you lose a little bit extra off the bottom of your bag, it's not going to be a big deal because it's relatively big. So aim for 3/8. If you need to, go 1/2 an inch, and we're just going to sew along the bottom, making sure that we backstitch on both ends. Okay, I'm going along about 3/8. So you do have a lot of layers there with those sides folded up and also with this pocket. So just make sure your machine is on a setting that is okay with it. And backstitch there. Okay, what we're going to do now is just have a look at where your stitch line is. It's a little bit hard for you to see on mine just because it's black on black, sorry. But you'll be able to see yours. Come down just underneath it, and preferably with a rotary cutter, but use scissors if you have to. Cut that edge off. So now you have that nice, clean, straight edge. Now what we're going to do is turn it inside out. So our lining sides are out, and poke out your corners because that side piece will now lie up like that. And poke out that one. Okay, just going to give that another bit of a hit with the iron, and then just take that back over to the machine, and all we are going to do is sew along this bottom edge. Now, because we used our rotary cutter and we cut off all that excess seam, then we should be able to sew along this bottom edge at about 1/4 of an inch. I can feel that seam. It's about there. So we want to make sure that we catch that seam, that we're not sewing on it or below it. We want to be sewing above that seam. So when we turn the bag back out, we don't have any little frayed bits hanging out. So when you're over at your machine, just have a good feel, and you'll be able to feel where it is and make sure that you're sewing above it. So I'm just going to let it go down a little bit further. So I'm probably at about 3/8 of an inch there. There's no point trying to get as close to the edge as you possibly can, and then not catching those ends. Now, I might have wanted to grab my hump jump. I think it should be right. I'm still not used to this machine, but I'm going to use my little purple thing to help me hold that seam down. And then that edge. Back stitch. And there we go. Nice. Oh, it's looking good. Okay, let's turn it out and see how I went with catching those edges. Poke those corners. Yep. We caught them. Awesome. Okay, now we're going to let those sides sort of fold in like they naturally want to with our straps sewn the way that we have them. And there it is, our grocery bag. I really like that. That's pretty. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to fold it up so you can tuck it away in that corner, because there is a little bit of a knack to it. Okay, let's have a look at how to fold this thing up. So the pocket is there, so I'm going to flip it pocket side down, flip my sides into the edges of that pocket, flip it back over. So it's folded back over with the pocket side up. Now I'm going to get this pocket and flip it inside out, and then flip the bag back over again. Now poke it right down so that you've got all the room that you need, so it folds down nicely. I mean, you know, if you're just doing it to shove it in your handbag, don't worry, but if you're presenting it to someone as a gift or at a market, you want this to look good. And then you are going to fold the rest of the bag down into that pocket. There you go. Squish, squish, squish. And there. That folds down so nice and neat. Love it. There we have it. There is our finished bag all folded up into its little pocket. That is a really fun little sew. I reckon if I wasn't moving cameras around, then I could probably get that down to like half an hour, 40 minutes. So it's a quick little project and doesn't take too much fabric. I was going to say it's just fabric that I found in my drawer, but I have a lot of drawers and a lot of fabric, so that's nothing special. But it doesn't take too much fabric is my point. So I hope that you make one, and I hope that you enjoyed my tutorial. If you did come along this far, please give me a like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. If you make one, chuck a photo in the comments if that's possible on YouTube. It just helps get the YouTube algorithms going for me, because I'm still fairly new to this, but I'm having a ball, man. This is so much fun. So, yep, I will see you next time. And remember, it's only fabric. You can always buy more. Okay, bye. Bugger.